everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Helen Allen. I'm the Executive Director of the Winter Show, and we're delighted to have you here. This is our midway point today. We're very excited to have with us some old dear friends and some new ones. Would love to introduce you to our esteemed panelists, our moderator, Tony Freund, who's with First Dibs. We're thrilled that you're here. Thank you so much. We're Todd Raymond, who, if you haven't been familiar with his work, you can actually go upstairs into Guy Riegel's booth, right, and get a sense of what his capabilities are. So he's a wonderful interior designer. Benoit of Maison Girard is also here in the show. His booth is on the 5th floor, number 510. I should have this memorized. And Julien Lejard, who is also a wonderful interior designer. We're thrilled to have you all with us today. And I'm going to turn it over to Tony.
Thank you, Helen, and thank you for coming. I'm super excited. Like most of you, I'm a longtime fan of this fair, and I was traveling in Europe last week, so this is my first chance to get here, and I'm going to go explore, but this looks like a great space. I love the reinvention of the Winter Show here. And you may notice wonderful Amy Lau, is not here. She came down with COVID 2 days ago, and sends her apologies. But I heard from her this afternoon. She seems to be doing well, so let's just keep your masks on, folks, I guess is the takeaway on that. So thank you, Helen, for the introductions. I'm going to do a little bit more of just a brief to sort of flesh out who these guys are on the panel for you all, and I'll start with Todd on my left, your right. A graduate of Parsons School of Design, Todd Raymond began his career at Tony Chi and Associates, where his work focused on the design of the acclaimed Rosewood Hong Kong Hotel. Expanding into residential design, Todd went on to work for Pembroke and Ives, Dan Fink Studio, and Sean Henderson Interior Design, where he created luxury interiors for homes all over the country. In April of 2020, so what was that, like a month into COVID, he founded his own firm. Actually, we talked right about then, the challenges of launching a firm in the midst of a pandemic. But he's come out on the other side and having a lot of success. So he launched his firm, Studio Todd Raymond, which crafts bold, balanced, and decidedly layered interiors. And then the farthest from me is Julien Lejard, who's a designer and founder of Lejard Studio, which was formerly known as the Prestige Group. He's known for his residential and hospitality projects and for such luxury retail projects as storefronts for Tiffany, Chanel, and Dior. After successfully completing turnkey residential properties and some of the most beloved restaurants in New York City, he relocated his studio in Miami. Or did you relocate or just open a second? A second, so he's still in New York and in Miami in 2021 to continue to deliver luxury design services to new markets. The latest projects of Lejard Studio include the restaurants Le Grand Boucherie, which is around the corner from my former office, and KYU in New York City, and the Lalique Concept Store in Bal Harbour. And then the last fellow here is Benoit F. Drut, is the owner of Maison Girard, a longtime Winter Show participant. The late Gerard Widdershoven founded the gallery in 1974 as a destination for French Art Deco, and Benoit joined as a partner in 1998. The pair cemented the gallery's reputation as an authority of 20th and 21st century art and design via numerous cataloged exhibitions on work from the 1920s through the present, including 5 shows on Maison Leleu, and by participating in fairs in New York, Paris, Dubai, and Miami. As early as 2001, Benoit was among the first to present vintage material alongside contemporary design. Very novel approach at the time. Today, the gallery represents luminaries such as Achille Salvani from Italy and London, Hervé van der Straeten from Paris, and Ayala Serfati, a wonderful Israeli artisan and artist, just to name a few. In this week's Introspective magazine, which is the online digital magazine at First Dibs that I oversee, we've profiled a line of eco-friendly and customizable seating made of recycled felt, aluminum, and wood that Maison Girard is now offering. As David Keeps writes in the story, Benoit, quote, showcases these stackable designs in dialogue with one another and with the gallery's signature mix of antiques and contemporary pieces, including an early 20th century burlwood cabinet in the Vienna Secession style, a rare T.H. Robesjean Gibbings coffee table, Achille Salvani's 2018 Maasai shelving, and Alexander Zakulin's 2016 patented steel side table. All these pieces can coexist, Drew says in the piece. It's a happy melting pot. So a word about happy melting pots, or the pleasure of eclecticism, which is the subject of this talk. It feels obvious, right, to our eyes and ears, the joy of the mix. But not so long ago, it really wasn't an acceptable thing. It wasn't a way to do things. When I was a young editor in the 1990s, I remember the Biennale in France, in Paris, hired Jacques Grange, or some of the dealers hired Jacques Grange to sort of rethink their booths of 18th century French furniture, which was really sort of shocking to the establishment at the time. Previously these rooms had been perfect French taste, all period. And that was really the beginning in the 90s, not so long ago for some of us to think that that could be a radical idea, that you could mix 18th century French furniture with 20th century furniture with even now 21st century pieces. So I just want to sort of ask each of you, do you remember sort of the first shock of seeing a room that sort of broke the rules of being completely, a holistic thing and just sort of mix things that just made you think, wow, we can do that? And should I call on you or just?
I remember Axel Vervoort, the Belgian dealers booth at the Biennale, where you would have like beautiful. Sorry, I remember like I was 15, 16, going to the Biennale, and then looking at Axel Vervoort, a Belgian dealer's offering. And you had, an old parquet floor, some brasserie on the wall that were stripped of the original painting but roughly done, and then a couple of Asian sculpture, maybe a medieval bench, and another art piece out of another century, out of another continent. And to me, that was always like a wow factor. Like everything was showcased in its own way, and yet it really worked harmoniously.
I always think about Axel Vervoort's booth at the fair, whose name we shall not name, in the Netherlands, and how the mix was so incredible. I used to think, the antiquities dealers should all be getting together and paying this guy, because he made this, classical statuary look so modern and cool, and, old master paintings, just everything. That, yeah, he really is a curator of the mix.
And the lighting is one of the secrets.
The lighting's good too. Julien, you have a?
I had the chance to collaborate on a project with Jacques Grange maybe 13 years ago. It was for a residence in Greenwich, Connecticut. And same thing, I was really amazed by his skills actually to be able to mix up like antiques. And that's where I discovered that actually like the treasure that even the flea market in Paris was offering. It was something at that time that I was not really aware of. And I was thinking of how he was able to kind of have a very contemporary modern house and create in one room a moment where a chair could actually make an entire room together. So yeah, like 12, 13 years ago with this Jacques Grange residence.
Yeah. So Axel Vervoort, Jacques Grange, and now Todd, who's your iconoclast?
It's funny, actually. My mind went immediately to my first job out of design school, like 11 years ago, was actually at Tony Chin Associates, who you sort of noted. I remember walking in for my interview and just being blown away at their offices in general. I mean, they're down in like West Soho, and it was this very sort of industrial, old New York warehouse kind of building. And, Tony's work is a lot of antiques and beautiful pieces and gorgeous artwork, both contemporary and sort of historic, and how that all lived in one space and the way that he sort of presented it and the way that we sort of related that to our projects that we were working on was just amazing to me. Like, I had never really thought that I would even enjoy sort of antiques and that sort of vocabulary, but the way that they all kind of came together was my first sort of introduction to that sort of eclectic mix, and it stuck with me for a long time.
I'm just going to jump around in my questions. This is sort of triggering a thing. You two are young designers. I think a lot of young designers are scared of antiques. So is it because you had this early exposure to really talented mentors who were using them so well that you're not scared?
I think so, absolutely. I've learned to appreciate them, and I think when you get to sort of learn certain designers and the history behind a lot of pieces, that means a lot to a space and to a homeowner. So it's not for everyone, for sure, but I think that there is, at least for me, a level of respect because I've seen, I've learned the history of where these pieces can come from and sort of how they can live in a contemporary space, and it absolutely has carved away because I've worked at several firms where, I've worked at a really modern firm where we did hardly any antiques, and then I've worked at sort of a firm where we did almost entirely antiques, and sort of I've been able to navigate my way through that world and to what my own personal taste is. I tend to gravitate towards more modern interiors that have a touch of antiques, not too heavy, but it's been a sort of a love affair with antiques since that very beginning that's stuck with me, yeah.
And you, Julien? Yeah.
I think it's more on the customer side. I've always been with clients, to kind of like try to understand if they really understand what is an antique, because most of the times they have pieces of their own that they actually purchase, but they don't know the true value. So there was always a challenge to really understand that, how we could work with them and make an introduction to antiques. I would say that for us, it's fairly new. We have also been working with the auction house now, because we think that there is a true value now to acquire antiques. So we kind of advertise to our client that is also an investment for them to have those pieces. I can remember when 10 years ago, Christian Liègre, when you were buying a piece of Christian Liègre, was kind of like a semi-custom. Today, it's kind of like almost acquiring an antique, having like kind of a recycled Christian Liègre table, actually get value. So more and more we encourage actually clients to integrate that. So from, yes, thinking of the Jacques Grange project that obviously was spectacular, and today trying to recreate those moments where it's a more personalized element. It's always bringing past pieces that are existing to a custom home is always a very interesting challenge.
I think I always say, if you put a great antique in a room, it can, an otherwise contemporary room, it can really elevate all those contemporary pieces, just as the antique will be made to feel timeless and modern when it's associated with the newer pieces. So maybe each of you can sort of talk about like a particularly interesting pairing of a new and old piece that you've either shown in a show or that you've deployed in a project that really surprised you by how well they work together and what they gave to each other.
Yeah. My mind's going to a project that we just wrapped up in Soho, and we incorporated a few really beautiful select antiques. And I think that they were successful because what we like to do at our firm is we kind of pare back the design to one element, one sort of theme, one sort of continuous design vocabulary that we try to carry throughout the project. And I think it's the details of design and the subtleties of things like that are what make a project feel like it's done by a designer. And we had picked a vintage 1970s Vittorio Dassi sort of sideboard. And that was sort of like the kickoff piece for the project. It was in really bad shape. We had it completely refinished and like a high gloss lacquer sheen to it, but it has these sort of really beautiful bow and arrow. I'm sorry, not bow and arrow. What are those things called? I should know. My husband's Australian. Those things that you throw in the air. Boomerang. Thank you. The boomerang shape to it had like some of these beautiful curves, and we started sourcing more contemporary furniture for the project, and we ended up finding that shape in a lot of contemporary designs. And so we ended up, when in doubt, what chair do we go with, this one or this one? Ultimately, we picked the one that kind of maybe had a little bit of that boomerang sort of silhouette. And so it was a really successful project because a lot of the design elements kind of tied back to that piece in a very subtle way. And it's not something I think you walk into the space and you're like, oh, there's a boomerang theme. Like, it's that shape all over and over again, but it's in your mind sort of picks up on things like that. And so, at least for this one recent project that we did, it was a pretty successful project because of that added value. Yeah.
So Benoit, what's when you first introduced, was Hervé van der Straten was sort of the first contemporary designer that you introduced into your?
That I did, yes, actually. It was very simple. It was 3 pieces upright. It was when we started with contemporary. Gerard was a little bit reluctant, so it was new territory. So I had narrowed down at the time to 3 pieces. One mirror in the shape called the branch mirror, which is really made of branches, bronze branches, stylized. And that piece goes with everything. I think it could be at home with a Baroque chest, above a Baroque chest of drawer. It can be at home in a radically modern, above a shelf that made of one piece of wood. And it's, I think I've seen it in every incarnation. And I think this is one a good example of things that branches times and materials.
What was it? Do you remember where you displayed it initially? Like what was around it?
Originally, it got plenty of things, different setup, very different from one another. At some point, we had it above a Dominique 1930s modernist Dominique console that was made of a big thick slab of Saint-Gobain glass, and the brackets were chrome, very big and like very modern, and the contrast was insane, like of material and of like the rareness of the branches, and it was really successful.
So sometimes it's about finding commonalities, and sometimes it's just the stark contrast can make it really work. Julien, do you have a sort of take on an antique and a contemporary piece that?
Like Grande Boucherie actually was a very interesting and unique project because we started this project just before pandemic, actually March 1st, 2020, actually, like when the world shut down. We were asked to open one of the biggest restaurants in New York City. And the owner, Emil Stavkovs, he's a Francophile and defend really the values of antiques in France, especially in the flea market. And if you go to La Grande Boucherie, actually, you are in a very modern, high energy, high environment New York City, and you have to create kind of a Parisian square. And in order to provide this authenticity for the restaurant, we flew to Paris and we really literally shopped what pieces actually was meant to be, I would say, moving us. So we found this beautiful antique skylight, actually light, that belonged to a private mansion next to Opéra Garnier. And we didn't know actually where we were going to put it, but because we loved it so much, we bought it, flew it to New York, and if you go there now, this is actually the central piece of the restaurant. So this was a very, it was more than a challenge, it was a very complex and delicate operation, but this is where we have been, I think, able to bridge, an old world of the Art Nouveau Belle Époque style, antique pieces to kind of like a new modern environment like New York City.
Thinking about antiques and just what you were saying before, you don't necessarily do an entire room in antiques, but you like to include at least one piece. Can you talk about what an antique does or gives to a space that, why?
Yeah, for me it gives a sense of history and a sense of place. I feel like the rooms to me and our personal aesthetic and what I gravitate towards is that rooms feel finished if it feels like they have pieces that have been lived in and they sort of, the pieces come from the homeowners and it's a real collection of what's important to them. And, we've probably all worked on projects where, you know, client says, just come in and do everything, and you're bringing, you know, towels on the towel bars and, you know, candy in the candy jar and that kind of thing. And those projects, for me, feel a little impersonal. So for me, in sort of a vintage or an antique piece, especially if it's an heirloom piece, one of the pictures was of mine that is with this baby grand piano. Like, the client just had to have their baby grand piano in their living room in their home in East Hampton. And it was like not a room to have a baby grand piano. I mean, the room was like a quarter of the size of this, and they were like, and we want a big sofa, and we want a place to play games, and we want a fireplace, and we want all this stuff. And it was sort of a challenge, but it was super important to them. So that was sort of like, okay, well, this is the starting point. It sort of brings a sentiment, it brings a feeling, it brings a sense of home and being for someone that owns that house. And that piece was a vintage piece that, unfortunately, you know, we had to put in there. Not unfortunately, fortunately, and ended up actually really beautiful. Yeah. The chairs that we picked, that, you know, if it goes back to it, the chairs in front of the fireplace have this cute little arm that we sort of played off of, like, you know, let's display the piano open and kind of see that beautiful silhouette of the piano, and like, oh, let's go with that little wing feel. And so, cheeky as it sounds, that's kind of how we made it work in that really small room. So I think it was successful there.
Julianne, have you had experience having to incorporate the client's antique into a space that maybe...
Yes, and actually, same. We encourage them actually to bring things that, you know, that like bring life actually to the room. As soon as there is a story behind, actually, for me, it belongs like an antique. You know, that's. So many times, actually, our clientele is mostly European, so they have been traveling all over the world, and each time they move from a house to another house, they have actually kind of a layers. You know, it's like kind of a tree. So it's very interesting to see that how they still keep actually this console that they had when they are 20 years old, that were their first acquired piece. So we respect that. I think same way, like we are not doing staging. We're really like trying to bring a soul into the room, and antiques bring that like very well.
We're working on a project now in Tribeca at 108 Leonard, which is this massive monumental building down in Tribeca that spans an entire city block. And it's a really cool, like, old Beaux-Art, actually I think it's Beaux-Art building that they've completely got renovated. And they've instilled this sort of like modern wall applied moldings and that sort of historical feel to the building, but they've juxtaposed it with very sleek kitchens and very sleek bathrooms, and the millwork is all very nicely done. Our client came to us and has this gigantic, like, I mean, like 22 feet wide Mark Beard painting from, I don't know, the early 70s or late 80s or whatever. And he, you know, did these really sort of ornate sort of paintings that have, you know, these big, I think the frame of it's like 12 inches wide that just goes around. It's absolutely ginormous, and it will sort of entirely command the living room. So to play off of that, we're doing all very minimal modern furniture to off-play that. So it's that push and pull, and that goes back to Benoit's sort of point about like that stark contrast of like, you know, the client came to us with like, we have to incorporate this piece, but how do we make it feel contemporary and up to date?
That also brings to mind, you know, the architectural shell can also influence how you, you know, in a very contemporary space, condo in Chelsea would really benefit from an antique to give it a little bit of gravitas. And I always think about all those great French interior designers with their great Parisian apartments. I sort of feel like, how could you not create a beautiful room with those that sort of molding and flooring and light? So, you know, that will also determine your mix of old and new, depending on what the shell is.
Absolutely. I love those projects. Those are the best.
Is this the...
Yeah, that's actually the ley light I was discussing, you know, and and we kind of like reinterpreted like some of the ornaments that belong actually to the antique pieces and integrated in the new construction. It was a gut renovation, so we really started from scratch. So we took like actually those acanthus leaf, integrated them in plaster molds. We took them onto you know, kind of like wood panels, inlays. You know, we also, some of the artwork that you can see on the glass are part of antiques that are mixed up actually with the space. So I do feel like, you know, creating a new space with an old world elements is really what defines authenticity. It's very hard actually today when we go to those like new condo development, 220 CPS, 432 Park Avenue. you are given a cube, and in this cube you have to express and create authenticity. So as you said, in Paris, you have those Osmanian buildings, very easily, I would say, you have like tall ceilings, moldings, you come, you put furniture, and that's it, you have beautiful interiors. New York, or in Miami even, it's a different story.
Well, I'm thinking about the apartment that Benoit did in 40 East End Avenue, the penthouse we were looking at. I think that image is on here too. I mean, that's a glass box in the sky, but you have created one of the most beautiful layered rooms. You know, it's an icon of eclecticism. So what was your approach to that, giving that space life?
It was a bit challenging at first because you have to deal with the requirement of a developer. What do they need to see and their vision of what will sell the apartment. So it had some challenging elements, but I clearly saw like 2 living room, and so I started with carpets. The first day I bought carpets, and I said, okay, this is what will be the big room, and that already required some conversation. But and after that I bought the biggest pieces, and I think it's gonna come. Yeah, that's it. That's the room. So yeah, we bought the carpets, and that clearly helped.
And what
to have
is that, 1920s? What's the vintage? of
that
the
actually, the carpet is actually vintage carpet. It's a star carpet made after André Arbus. It's basically strongly inspired by an Arbus design, and then came the sofas and the sofa on the side here. One is 1925 Paul Follow. The other one is 1940 French. And then on the other side, all the armchairs are contemporary. In the forefront, you have the armchairs by Achille Salvani, a French designer, Carol Egan on the right for the open armchair. And then the sofa at the end is Leleu 1950.
And then the chandelier.
The chandelier was custom designed by one of our artists, Douglas Fanning, and this is solid bronze that is carved and patinated.
Me, I mean, it's it can't have more disparate objects in it, and yet it all is so coherent and
It's a
inspiring.
home run.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So maybe you need to hang out your shingle as an interior designer and give these guys a little.
No, those guys do that very well.
I need to shop more at Maison
Let me
Garage.
find it. Oh shit! What am I losing? I don't know.
Keep breaking things.
My phone. Okay, that's my
Yeah,
phone.
keep create beautiful spaces, but keep them out of your space. Although you drop your phone, but I doubt you've ever dropped a piece in the gallery.
No, I don't.
You're much more careful with that. Are there antiques that you think? I mean, Art Deco has had such a long run. Are there antiques that just feel particularly relevant today, or is there anything that may have fallen out of style that you all feel is coming back into style?
I like
now?
those big old Louis XV armchairs.
Oh yeah.
Open arm, the fauteuil à la reine, as we call it. I don't think we have any on my slides, but it's very comfortable and it's elegant, it's chic.
Louis XV.
Louis XV fauteuil à la reine.
You all heard it here first.
So it's a large fauteuil with open arms usually, and it's the beautiful curved, especially if it's a gilt wood that is a bit worn and tired. So then it has a quite nice patina and surprisingly comfortable.
Well, I wish I would be that bold in my design and put Louis XVI or Louis XV chairs. We industrial area with Jean Prouvé, and I think for us, it's really a big statement. It works very, very well in New York. I'm currently doing a project with Alain Ducasse from Paris, and he's creating a chocolaterie in Brooklyn. And his first thing is he's a very big collector of Jean Prouvé, and right away the industrial look works very well actually with New York. So I would say yes, this era of 1960, 1970, very practical, I would say, furniture works very well.
Technically, as everyone knows, an antique has to be 100 years old, so you're talking about vintage material. I heard somebody say, one of you said something about an antique from 1970, which made me feel very old and offended. So I have to get that off my chest right now.
It's either me or you.
Todd, what are you saying? What's cool to you?
I'm currently having a love affair with Brazilian mid-century. I don't know why. I just feel like I've been gravitating towards finding, in particular, armchairs and lounge chairs. They just have really beautiful silhouettes that we've been kind of zeroing in on for a couple of projects. You know, Lina Bombardi, Sergio Rodriguez, and the likes of the sort of that 70s group. Beautiful woods that they used, and also just the silhouette is just a lot of simple silhouettes, but really kind of striking and sort of, they have that sort of artistic quality where it's like it's a sculptural piece of furniture, which we like, and they can really make a statement in a room on their own. So
Mixed in with
yeah,
contemporary.
yeah, that's kind of what I've been going for lately.
Julian, you were talking about advising your clients about antiques being a good investment, and I don't, compared to a lot of contemporary stuff, even from big box stores, you can find a beautifully crafted antique for less money. Maybe not upstairs here. I haven't shopped it yet, so I don't know if there are bargains to be had, but you can, antiques are a relative bargain now compared to what the market was 20 years ago. So are you seeing that as an impetus to entice young clients or to go there?
Yeah, I find it hard sometimes. We haven't really, our office hasn't worked out the rhythm of getting clients on board with auctions just yet. It's a really tricky thing because they have to be able to commit to something up front, and a lot of people have that hesitation. The whole design might not be worked out and fleshed out in terms of meetings and rooms and whatnot, but I think a lot of people sometimes still have a hard time. They hire you as a designer, but they trust you, but they sort of don't trust you as well. Like you have a vision and you're like, this is perfect, we have to have it. Like the auction's in 10 days from now. And they're like, but we've only gone over the living room. And you're like, I don't care, but it's perfect for your bedroom. I know we're gonna get there in like a month, but promise me. And so that it's been a little bit hard, but it is an educational process. And I think people that are willing to sort of do that, and I think you get a little bit of a good deal too, if you can kind of look and find some things that you might like, I think it's great. And also, even with platforms like First Dibs, it's great to be able to source from galleries all over the world. And, not that First Dibs is an auction house, but it's a great resource to be able to source from all over the world. We have the Right Auction in Rago, and you have some of these really great places. And, we're kind of eyeing a Fontana Arte chandelier right now for a project. And it's great, and this particular client that I'm thinking about is willing to sort of bite the bullet and sort of go for something now up front, even though we just started the project. So, yeah, I find it's a little bit of a hard dance to kind of do. Certain clients are kind of into it, and some clients aren't. That's been my experience.
I have the same feeling. Actually, our clients, most of them are art collectors, and I always try to compare their artwork on paintings and sculpture to furniture. For younger, I would say, clients, it's more difficult to kind of achieve. But for like a more established clientele that have been traveling and understand, what it is to go to the flea market in Paris, which is one of the most amazing resources. You go and you understand. It becomes kind of a complementary option for the design. So indeed, we try not to overwhelm them with the process, because that can be very exhausting, doing auctions and make them understand that, those pieces can come at a higher price. But after, yes, if you compare today, even on First Dibs, actually, the platform is amazing. You can really easily actually create a mood board and show them pieces of antiques and if you compare them, if you want to do the same quality, I would say with the same design, custom, it would cost you even more money than certain antiques. So when you start to compare apple to apple and what it is to have an authentic piece in your room, it's easier as a process.
So with supply chain disruptions, it's a lot easier to buy an antique and get into your house immediately.
Yeah.
Benoit, I'm sort of curious. If people come into the shop, into the gallery, are you selling? Are you cross-selling antiques and contemporary pieces to the same clients, and is that?
Oh yeah, no, there's no. Actually, we have two galleries, and things travel from one to another. There is no rhyme, no reason. I don't like rules as a rule, so it's a happy melting pot of. So yeah, there's no, and oftentimes they will buy antiques and contemporary. Yeah.
And And across sort of demographics, I mean, young buyers are open to it. Older buyers, everybody.
Well, the old collectors, like I ran opening night into a very good client that was a collector of Rollman and whatnot, and a client of Gerard before me. And she sold her apartment, she sold all the content with it, and she's starting new. And now it's going to be contemporary and antiques, but new antiques.
That's great.
And she's probably 75.
Amazing. So we're talking about the successful mixes. Have you ever actually seen or deployed or tried to deploy pieces from disparate pieces that actually didn't work, were sort of disastrous? Can we learn some, give some cautionary tales? Never mix your deco with your whatever it is. Yeah.
Bad reproduction. Stay away.
There's sometimes clients come to you with a piece that they want to incorporate, and it's not your favorite, and you got to make it work. I like to educate them to what room it lives in based on material selection, and we play off textures and things like that. So process of elimination, it should go in the guest bedroom. So that kind of thing. I hope none of my clients are here. No, but in all seriousness, I mean, there is some truth behind like what it is, what kind of material it is, what color wood it is, based on what room I see it living in, and I think sometimes that's hard for people to then own something that's so special to them, sort of see it in a different light. It's a chest that's always lived in their dining room, and they want it in their dining room, and you're like, but it could look great in the entry, and getting people to sort of think outside the box when it comes to their personal items is one thing. I haven't really come across too many scenarios where we've been unsuccessful with getting people to move things that we've wanted them to, because of that sort of process of teaching them why it would look better in one room than another, but yeah, I can't really think of anything off the top of my head that was sort of like, oh, wish we hadn't done that.
I think the contrary happened. We work for Lalique. We do their new design concept store, and the very first design concept we presented, so a very traditional house, like 150 years old company. So they have a lot of antique pieces that we have to integrate in a new design. And the challenge with them is to create an interior that is for the 21st century generation, but in respect of antiques. And for Bal Harbour, they wanted really like the new generation. We want technology. So we really move forward to, like Montclair, what they do, like this like stores where technology is integrated with art. And I think they were not ready yet. So the very first concept was approved at a kind of a staff level in New York, and we presented in Paris, and they were really, really like not ready to do this. So that's not a kind of I would say it was not unsuccessful, but it takes time for people to bridge those two worlds of antique and kind of like contemporary interiors. It's sometimes very challenging.
I always think about when Tiffany's had that campaign, we're not your mother's Tiffany, and everyone's like, I like my mother's Tiffany. What's wrong with that? And I often have found it. I mean, I've seen it in magazines too when they revamp them. They want to attract a younger audience. Back when magazines existed, and so they'd bring in a new editor, they'd freshen it up. They wouldn't attract the new younger readers, and they'd alienate all their older readers, and they'd be left with they'd destroy it. So I think with heritage brands, you have to be very careful about how you bring them into the 21st century. It's about juxtaposing. All right, Benoit, I'll let you answer this. Your last take on this question of a bad pairing of an antique and a contemporary piece. Maybe you've never done it, but you've walked into a room where you've seen it. So
One thing is that it's not because you paid a lot of money for a piece that the piece is beautiful, and is real. A piece with no pedigree but just a beautiful piece by itself that didn't cost much money, maybe equally more beautiful than. So the price tag should not be. It doesn't matter how much it costs. What really matters is the piece itself. It should speak for yourself.
And I think what Julien was saying about having coming with a story, even if it's not a great piece, but if it came with the family and traveled with the family as a story and a patina, which I think we're seeing people.
There is always a guest room.
Yeah, putting the guest chair. Actually, I think I did the panel. I did the panel
So
last
bad.
year virtually with Robert Couturier, and he talked about a client that he went in, or a potential client, and he saw their collection. It was a big collection of like accumulated over many years, and he looked at it and he said, "Well, this is all very nice, and it will look wonderful up in the attic." It did not, needless to say, did not get that job, but he didn't seem to care. So I have more questions, but I think maybe now I want to open it up. If anybody's got a question, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Okay? Yes?
In one of the slide, actually, you of a table with vases, you had actually some African pieces. You'll see coming back.
There was one in the project that I did in East Hampton. The client, the husband was from South Africa, and the husband and wife had traveled extensively around the world, and a lot of their sort of collectibles were super important, mostly art pieces and sort of pieces to hang on the wall were really important to them to incorporate into the home for the decor. So that set the tone in terms of like a neutral palette, because they didn't want it, they really wanted these pieces to show, to be standouts. So we actually, the two masks, I think that, I don't know if Katerina put it in the slide, but there's two sort of gigantic masks that sort of command the TV room, and it was sort of pride of place in the house because someplace that they would see it every day.
But you raise a good point. Eclecticism isn't just old and new. It's geographic,
Yeah.
international. It's also high and low, expensive and expensive.
Well, I have a question. Going back to the supply chain demand, I mean, obviously, I'm biased because I run the winter show, but I mean, are you finding that now, or at least since COVID started, that your clients are looking more towards the showrooms that have pieces that are readily available in stock because of the supply chain issues? Are you finding that that is becoming more of a demand?
Absolutely. I mean, we're always, even pre-COVID, every designer has those projects that has a deadline, and the baby's coming, and it's coming on August 1st, so the deadline is July 31st kind of thing, or everyone wants to be in by Thanksgiving or the holidays, and we've always had those deadlines previous to COVID, but it's been more relevant now because of the sourcing issues. Absolutely. Like, people are more susceptible to buy vintage and antique pieces because, and also it's our job to be smart about sourcing as well. Like, we want to be able to, we can't find a gigantic, 15-foot long curved sofa, and we can't have that made fast enough. But there's great vintage options out there, and maybe we buy one from Maison Girard and have it reupholstered, that kind of thing.
Maison Girard has a 13-foot one upstairs.
I know.
And an identical one in Paris waiting.
Yeah, but I've definitely become much savvier in terms of remembering to source vintage and antique pieces when in doubt, or when we've been in a pinch to kind of get things done. The African mask house we did in 4 months, and it was at the beginning of COVID. It was insane because the baby was coming and they wanted to be moved out to the Hamptons full time, and it was insane, but we were very strategic in finding things that we could meet that deadline, so yeah.
Yeah, for client today, actually, it's even more important for them timeline than even price. When we start projects, we kind of literally create spreadsheets, procurement processes where literally we have a deadline and we need to make sure that it's arriving on time. Or if it's like pieces that are more curated, then we find something temporary. But definitely today with the supply chain, and the first thing they ask is, hey, what's going to be the lead time? Everybody's worried that you're going to have like actually a room and the sofa will not get there, the carpets will not get there, and everybody will move in and you're going to be in a house that is empty. So definitely antiques, auction house, and anything showroom available are the go-to things right now.
Benoit, have you had to deal with letting your clients know about lead times on some of your pieces? And
We've been able to respect pretty much all the lead time. I think an artist like Niamh Berry, who works out of Ireland, at the beginning of COVID, when they got, because of course their time off was different than ours here. But at some point, her team agreed to account for the forced time out as their holidays, and so they could respect the entire commitment to deadline. So that's been great. but it's a challenge. Here the mask.
I 100%, and that's I think a direct result from social media and the accessibility of just imagery that people come to me with. You know, they have a very strong understanding of what they want aesthetically because they've pinned all these things on Pinterest from, you know, Athena Calderon, who has like over 1 million followers on Instagram, and she sort of has this look where it's, you know, antiques mixed with modern. You know, she does a Mario Bellini sofa with this sort of goopy, ornate, gold gilded mirror, and people like that, and people respond to that. It's the way that people put these sort of presences, at least on social media, they put these rooms together. So I think that that certainly helps. Like, I think it helps educate the sort of the millennial generation that, you know, there's a lot of my clients are sort of first-time homeowners, or it's their first time hiring a designer. You know, they've bought a really nice apartment and they finally, you know, have the funds to be able to do it. They're, you know, late 30s, early 40s, and it's sort of like, okay, we're doing this for the first time. And so a lot of it is an education process, but it is because they come with us with this really strong understanding of what they have seen and what they like, and sort of how do we incorporate that.
I also think that you know, millennials they've all seen like a Chandigarh chair, but you know, I can just picture some 30-year-old person saying, "I just found the coolest thing. You're never gonna believe it. It's Louis the 15th." You know, and so all of a sudden Louis the 15th is hip, right, and cool because nobody's seen it. This young generation haven't seen these pieces in a generation. So I do think those are going to cycle back in.
Well, also a lot of the retailers are doing riffs on these sort of really classical designs. I think it's great. I think it's amazing. Like, someone can't afford a $35,000 lounge chair. Okay, let's go to CB2 and get the $3,500 version. So I think that that's actually fantastic, and it's a great way to, again. Oh yeah. Is this your image? Yeah, it's beautiful.
Is that your house?
That was, yes, that was at some point a collection of vases that we were actually offering it for First Dibs, and I had spent a day creating a little vignette. That's a table. That's a table, and then there's a library table, and then behind there is the shelf.
I saw a question in the back.
Well, I think, well, great question. Yeah. I think eclecticism always existed, but we gave the definition of eclecticism each period differently. And to rebound, like the communication, Instagram, that, you know, everything is mixed today. And we live, like, look at New York by itself, and definition is the most maybe eclectic city in the world, where everyone from every culture meet up. So obviously that transpire into interior that we create. People from come Europe, they move to you know, they've traveled 15 different countries. So obviously eclecticism as of today is everywhere. So from the pieces we create, or like the design we do, or the client, their culture, and what they bring in their home, everything is mixed up, which is actually the beauty of what we do every day. That's why every project is different, every challenge is different. So
I think, you know, when I was thinking about the topic, you know, eclectic is a word. I mean, for as long as I've been reading design magazines, I'll hear people use the word eclectic, and they'll always qualify it with, it's a terrible term, but you know, it's eclectic. They're always apologetic for using that term, and I sort of was thinking, why? What is that? Why is that? Is it because it denotes like a dilettantism, that your eclecticism, you're not a scholar of one thing? I actually don't know the answer to that. Maybe somebody in the room. So why do people? Is it? Yeah. aesthetic world. So tell me your take on the word.
I run a National Historic Landmark Mansion and Gardens, and so I come at this from the perspective of how do people engage with this old stuff that may or may not matter, honestly, if we're going to be frank about it, and how does that relate now, and how have people in the, how is it not just a flat past where it was somehow pure and now it's not pure anymore? Time-wise in an eclectic way, but I think the 20th century, especially the middle to later part of the 20th century, did a number on our idea of what is truly pure and what is more heterogeneous, because we have all of these disciplines that are increasingly professionalized. There's no such thing as an amateur, curator or a decorator, or we have extensive programs and credentials, and I don't know. It really makes me think that maybe we are at a moment where we start to step back from that because we realize that there can be value and meaning that comes from other channels that aren't quite so regular.
This is a far deeper conversation than, but that's the Winter Antique Show. It takes you into deep stuff.
You can
Helen,
find it
next.
on 2 or on 9 or 5. Anyway, I just want to say thank you so much. That was really engaging, fun. It was just wonderful, and it was wonderful to be able to be looking at some of the works, your work, and seeing how you incorporate all myriad eras and geographic regions. So thank you so much for joining us. I hope that Tony and Todd and Julianne will take some time to wander the show floor and to see it. I encourage all of you, of course, also to wander the show floor. There's so many wonderful finds to be found upstairs. I just practically wept because my favorite portrait of all time was just removed because it was sold, and I was like, I wanted to see him one more time. But we're running through Sunday. We invite you, your friends, your guests to come and to explore. Our dealers are wonderful to speak with. They share their knowledge willingly. I also would be remiss if I did not say that thank you for coming. If your purchase of your ticket actually directly supports Eastside House Settlement, which is one of New York's longest running service organizations based in the South Bronx. And this show, which has been on hiatus since 2020, is the major fundraiser for that charity. And so every dollar that is raised through ticket sales actually goes to help New Yorkers most in need. So thank you so much, and a round of applause, not only to our esteemed panelists, but to you.
There's wine on 2.
Well, wine on 2, 5, and 9.
There's wine.
Where are the
There's
Negronis?
wine on every floor. Go for it.
Whatever helps you navigate.
Thank you.
Thank you.